In this video, my mother broke my wrist because I wouldn't ride a horse. Entitled nurse tells me to leave my baby at the hospital and come back in a week because she knows best. And accuse me of cheating on an open book, collaborative exam? Fine, I'll report myself to the Honor Council. My mother broke my wrist because I wouldn't ride a horse. My younger sister was Mom's golden child. She lived up to all of Mother's dearest high expectations and liked doing everything that our mom did, like riding horses. I was never interested in doing any of it, probably because of her poor treatment towards me for most of my childhood. My mom and dad had separated when I was very young, but they were civil around each other for the benefit of me and my siblings. At this point, my dad and family members on my dad's side didn't know the things my mom did to me and my brother. I can remember this day so vividly. We were visiting my aunt and her husband, my dad's sister, who lived on a farm. They were all interested in riding horses, but knew that I wasn't, which was never an issue to them. My mother, on the other hand, wasn't so understanding. My sister, 5 at the time, was riding around on a Shetland pony, with my uncle walking beside her, and I was sitting on the veranda watching her. My brother had walked off down the driveway a few hours before this, so was nowhere in sight. He's high-functioning autistic and was fine to be on his own. He was 11, and this was a small and safe rural town. While sitting and watching, my mother walked up to me. My dad was with my aunt on the other side of the farm. Mom, why won't you come and ride with your sister? Me, because I don't want to. Mom, don't be a spoiled brat. Get off your lazy ass now. Me, Mom, you know I don't like riding horses and I'm not good at it. Please don't make me. Mom, getting visibly angry. Get up now, you lazy little shit. She grabbed me by my wrist and pulled me hard and fast forward off the chair. I felt a sharp pain in my wrist as she pulled and I screamed out in pain. Me, Mom, you're hurting me. Stop, my wrist. Mom, stop being a suck and get up. My wrist hurt so bad and began to throb in pain, but whenever I said something about it, Mom just accused me of faking it to get out of doing things. She walked me over to where my dad and aunt were, with my mom dragging me by my now broken wrist, and when we got there, my dad noticed I was crying. Dad, what's wrong? Are you okay? Mom, squeezing my wrist to keep me from saying anything, she's fine. She wants to ride a horse. Me, no, I don't. I was cut off. Mom, yes you do. You want to ride the big horse, don't you? All of my objections were ignored by my mom and she made my dad help me onto a horse, bareback. The big horse was a Clydesdale. Anyone who knows about horses will know that a Clydesdale is far too big for an average, inexperienced horse rider, let alone an 8-year-old girl. And this horse was easily spooked, so having a new person on his back that didn't know what they were doing was enough to spook him. He jerked forward quickly and bucked me off. I landed in the grass with my hands taking most of the impact, which made the pain in my wrist even worse. The impact wasn't hard enough to break my wrist, but it was already broken before I'd gotten onto the horse. My mom came rushing over to me to see if I was okay. I was crying in pain and grasping onto my wrist. Mom, doing her best fake concerned mother act. Oh, you poor thing. Are you okay? Let me help you up. Me, my wrist, it hurts. Mom, oh no, you must have broken it when you fell. Dad took me to the hospital and my wrist was broken. When I told Dad that Mom broke my wrist, he didn't believe me. Not because he was a neglectful parent, but because he saw me fall onto my hands, so he put 2 and 2 together. Most of my cries for help as a child fell on deaf ears. I spent the next 8 weeks with my wrist in a cast, which made school hard as I couldn't hold a pen. It was my right wrist and I'm right-handed. I want to say that this was the worst thing my mother has done to me, but I'm sad to say it isn't. I'm no longer in contact with her and my life is better without her in it. Entitled nurse tells me to leave my baby at the hospital and come back in a week because she knows best. This goes back 28 years when I became a mother for the first time. I delivered a healthy baby boy and promptly 24 hours later, the hospital released us, and off I went in complete happiness with my new bundle of joy. My mother came home with my husband and I to help me for the first week. Within a few days, it became apparent my son was turning a horrid shade of yellow. My mom assured me it was most likely jaundice and he would probably need extra sunlight. We took him to the pediatrician, who felt he would be better off in the hospital under some blue lights. His instructions were very specific. He said, "Mom, I want you to go right to the hospital. You'll be sleeping at the hospital for the next several nights. I'm calling ahead so they have everything set up for you. Since you're breastfeeding, I want you to feed him as much as he will take, every 2 hours, and pump afterwards so there's a supply on hand. The rest of the time, sleep as much as possible. Get him settled in. Feed him, then go pack a bag and come back. He then hugged me because he had been my doctor since I was 13 and he just delivered my first baby and was my baby's doctor too, and our entire family adored this man and trusted him completely. The hospital was literally across the street. I was ready to cry. I felt like maybe I had done something wrong or my baby would not be in this predicament. I was breastfeeding, but it was a struggle, and so I just felt like a failure. I also don't do well with confrontation. Combine that with hormones raging through my body and, well, I was a mess. I arrive at the hospital and they usher us upstairs. I had just been discharged a few days before and a few nurses recognized me. I approached the counter where I encountered Nurse Ratchet for the first time. NR is Nurse Ratchet. Me is me. NR is extremely overweight and in her mid-60s, I would guess. NR, looking up from her paperwork as if I'm bothering her. May I help you? Me. Yes, doctor asked me to come check in. He said he called ahead and I explained the whole story, including the explicit instructions for breastfeeding. She looked at me over her glasses and sighed a little. I've been doing this a long time, and what your baby needs are the blue lights and formula. You don't have good enough breast milk or he wouldn't be in this situation. So let's get him checked in and then you can go home. We will call you when he's ready to be picked up. What followed was dead silence. The urge to cry was rising up inside me like a surging volcano about to erupt, and my eyes filled with tears. I was not one to buck an authority figure back then. Somehow I found my voice and I said, "My doctor said I am to stay here and breastfeed my son every 2 hours. He is not to have formula. We want to breastfeed him and only breastfeed him." My mom and my husband were looking at me and they could not believe I had spoken up. My mom told me later she was about to go off on that nurse, but I spoke up. Nurse Ratchet seemed quite offended that I dare speak to her in that manner. She replied rather rudely, "Fine. You can feed him back here." And I followed her to the nursery. It was divided in 2 sections, and one section was closed and full of extra newborn cribs, folding chairs, and equipment not in use. It was cold and dark. She pulled out a folding chair, looked at me and said, "You have exactly 20 minutes," and she stormed out. Well, that did it. Now I was being timed. When I was barely learning how to feed my baby, my milk had come in, my boobs were huge, and they hurt. My baby was sick, and I had to feed him in a cold, dark room, on a folding chair, when I had been using a pillow in a comfortable chair. I was despondent and began to cry. All I could do was hold my baby and cry and cry and cry. I didn't even feed him. He was sleeping soundly while I bawled my eyes out, telling him over and over, "Mommy is so sorry, baby, so sorry." I waited there until far after my time was up because I thought Nurse Ratchet was coming back for me to check my baby and I into a room. A bit later, a nurse comes in and I startled the hell out of her. Nice nurse said, "Oh honey, what are you doing in here?" So I explained the entire story again, and I'm sobbing at this point. She came over and hugged me and said, honey, I do not know what that nurse was thinking, but this is not at all how we do things. Come with me and let's get you all set up." I followed her and for the first time felt like there was a light at the end of the tunnel. The baby was beginning to get hungry, so I hung my head in shame and told her I had not been able to feed the baby in the 20 minutes I was allowed. And was there please some place I could sit and do that now? Nice nurse was the most precious human being on the planet next to my newborn son right at that moment. She took me to a room reserved for parents of babies who must stay in the hospital. I had a private room. She brought me sheets and pillows for the fold-out couch. She brought me the professional breast pump machine and set me up with a professional pumping kit. I was able to feed my son, get him under the blue lights, and then head home for a quick pack of clothing and be able to return in time for his next feeding. In case I ran late, I left 2 bottles of pumped breast milk for him. We returned a little more than an hour later and I walked in. Look for my baby and he is not under the blue lights. I did a little more searching and found Nurse Ratchet with my son in her arms, and she was feeding him a bottle of, you guessed it, Formula. The mama bear in me reared her protective head, and I just about lost my shit. I knocked on the glass furiously until she looked up. That woman had the nerve to roll her eyes at me. She came out and asked what I needed. Me. I explained to you that we are strictly breastfeeding our baby. We do not want him to have formula. I will take him now for his feeding. NR. What you don't seem to understand is formula is better. He needs to rid his body of bilirubins, and the formula will bind to it better than breast milk. If you breastfeed, he's just going to be here longer. Is that what you want? For your baby to be in the hospital longer? Me. My doctor said I am to breastfeed only. I will take my baby now. NR. Fine. Suit yourself. She plopped him into my arms, and off I went to my private room to breastfeed my son and then pump. That was my life for 3 nights and 4 days. The nurses would wake me up at night every 2 hours, and I would feed, then pump, then sleep. Day 4, he was a bright pink healthy baby, and we got to take him home. My husband called our doctor and told him what that nurse had done. On the second day, he came to check on us, and later I had the pleasure of witnessing my doctor give Nurse Ratchet a good mouthful of what he thought of her. He was furious, and she really got chewed out good. She was told to no longer have anything to do with our family. 2 years and 3 days after my son was born, I gave birth to my daughter in that same hospital. Upon arrival in labor and delivery, Nurse Ratchet was once again on duty. The nurse who checked us in was wonderful. I pointed to Nurse Ratchet and I said, "You see that woman over there?" Didn't even call her a nurse. We do not want that woman anywhere near our new baby that's on the way. She was a nightmare 2 years ago, and I will not be stressed out or bullied by her again. We also do not want our new baby fed formula for any reason unless it's unavoidable. We plan to breastfeed. I love that I had finally found my voice. The nurse checked us in, smiled at me, a great big smile, and said, "I absolutely understand, and you will not have to worry about her at all." We never laid eyes on her again. Unfortunately, I have never forgotten her or the damper she put on what was otherwise the most wonderful yet scary time of my life. She could have been nice. She could have been kind. She could have been understanding. She also could have followed doctor's orders, but apparently her vast experience as a nurse made her more knowledgeable and more entitled about what was best for my baby. A funny side note, we referred to my baby as our Kmart Blue Light Special after that. Accuse me of cheating on an open book collaborative exam? Fine, I'll report myself to the Honor Council. This happened about 10 years ago at my American university. I enrolled in a class that 2 friends also happened to enroll in, an elective for our major. The professor, whom I'll call Prof. Y, told us straight off the bat that our entire grade will be based on 2 exams that would be open book, and we could collaborate with anyone else in the class as long as we cited that we did so. Additionally, it was the kind of exam where you could submit it as many times as you want before the deadline. Prof. Y's rules, though, were that he'd grade easiest on the first try and much tougher with each subsequent try. Fair enough. Now, some background on this professor. I'm not defending him, but I do think this context is important. He immigrated to the States from another country where women are seen as inferior, and the often expectations of women are to be meek and quiet, maybe less so nowadays, but definitely more so when he was growing up. In class one day, a female student challenged the professor. He argued back. She admitted he made a good point, and he said to her, "You're very agreeable. You'd make a great wife." Now, at this point, I probably should have reported him for sexism. However, we all apparently let it slide. He was in his late 60s. He had tenor, so I think we all brushed it aside as harmless. Hindsight 2020. I'm female, by the way. Fast forward a few weeks into the semester, and the first exam is given to us. My male friend, David, and I did the test together. We submitted it on the same day. On the bottom of the test, I wrote, "Worked with David," because I wanted to follow the prof's rules. A few days later, we all got our first attempt at the test back. David scored the equivalent of about a C. Remember, he had further chances to improve. My test had a big fat 0 at the top with the words "cheater" written on it. I was shocked. I obviously held back after class and asked why this was written on my test, and Prof. Y started screaming at me. "I hate liars. I hate people like you. You are scum. You are a liar." I could not believe what I was hearing. I was sobbing, explaining that he said, and it was in the syllabus that we could work with other students. I asked where I had cheated, and Prof. Y had literally underlined the first 5 words of one question where both David and I had started off the paragraph saying something like, "The reason that we are seeing these results is," and that was it. I asked him why he thought I cheated and not David, but Prof. Y would not listen to me, continued to insult me until I left. Now, my university was super strict about plagiarism and cheating. We got emails like once a week about the Honor Council. All the emails said that anyone caught cheating would be reported to the Honor Council and sit trial. So I went to their office and reported myself. They were all confused and were like, "Wait, you're reporting yourself, not the professor?" And I told them calmly that I had been accused and given a 0 without any evidence, so I wanted to sit trial. They incredulously told me that no student had ever asked for a trial, but I was following the university rules and I was confident I would win. Needless to say, Prof. Y was not happy. At the next class, he pulled me after class and screamed at me yet again that they were his rules in his class and he decides the grades, not the Honor Council. I said, that's not the university's policy, and if he thought I was cheating, he should have gone to them. Since he didn't, I did. He was livid and tried to bully me to back down, but I didn't. We had the trial, and I obviously won. At the end of the semester, I organized a meeting with the dean of the school and filed a formal sexism complaint against Prof. Y. The dean, also incredulous, promised to launch a formal investigation into this professor and would be meeting with him to discuss. I'm sure that nothing happened besides a slap on the wrist, but even a slap on the wrist was worth it.